Everybody's got a best friend, right? Have you ever asked your best friend why you're the best friend?
Yep.
There's one.
Usually after a couple drinks, but yeah.
It's interesting that people who have such history and emotional connection to somebody may not actually know what the basis of that relationship is. And as Tish was saying, do you really know who the people that you serve are and why they come to you and what they value about you? And in some cases, do you know why they come to you despite some of the things that you do because you never bothered to ask? Oh, I know my customers. Probably not as well as you do. So Tish tends to do the deep dive analytical stuff. I do the touchy-feely stuff. And so we're going to look at the customer experience story. I primarily do two things in my business. I do customer experience story and I do brand story, and they're interrelated. It's just what part of the business we're focusing upon, inside or outside. We're going to be talking about the outside world here. How do we turn the client data into powerful, insightful, and coherent English narrative, right? So in science, when human behavior enters the equation, things go nonlinear. That's why physics is easy and sociology is hard. Neil deGrasse Tyson. People are super complicated, but it doesn't mean we can't figure them out. We don't have to solve for all of the variables. We have to solve for the particular variables that we isolate because we need to know. So we're going to look at a case study of a project that I did last fall for a company called CVM. And they reached out to me because they said, hey, we are a software company that helps businesses grow because of the analytics that we do. But we also do these instructional things. We have this big boot camp going on down in Texas. Can we get you down there for a couple of days? Because we need to show off how cool this boot camp is. Okay. So they saw themselves in this order: business analytics software that hosts business development workshops. And they needed me to help explain the workshop by giving the immersive experience thing that I do. Gotcha. Project outline: create a user experience video to explain and market CVM's week-long boot train class, style to be documentary, which is what I specialize in, and the narrative to be based upon the client interviews that we did at the end of the program, so that we had that experience fresh in their minds directly afterwards. The whole thing of, oh, I get great reviews is crap. What somebody will write after the fact and what they will say in real time, right then, right there, when they still have the emotions from it all, vastly different. The event was in Texas. The core of the boot camp, the members form into teams, and they build a case study to help a company that's struggling grow. That's the whole week-long project that they're working on. I was commissioned to spend 2.5 days of shooting B-roll. That's all of the stuff that fills in all the gaps. It explains what we were explaining. And an important part of this was at the very end, the students did not know this. At the very end of the program, the person who was owning the company the case study was based on was going to show up for an hour-long Q&A. And so they wanted to have that part of it. And then at the very end, half day of on-camera interviews with select members of the boot camp. Now, this all worked exactly the way that it should, because those 2.5 days of me wandering around and talking to people and hanging out did a number of things. One, I got to learn some things about the individuals. Two, I built a relationship with them. So I'm not just this guy, because at the very end of it all, I'm the one doing the interviews. Because working with the marketing person for the company, she knew a lot of things, but she also knew what she didn't know. And along the way, we figured out a number of core questions to ask, but I was the one who was using all the other things that I learned and all the other things that I do to get more out of them. So that was the premise of how we're going to do this. So what happens is you put people on camera, and when I do this, it's just my subject and me. Closed door, single flow of energy between me and the subject. There's no distractions, and it's a relationship. And I'm not hiding behind the camera. I have the camera here so the eyes connect, because I need to connect with my people. They have to be vulnerable with me. And so you get hours of conversation that when we start to transcribe out, gives us loads and loads and loads of information, which we figure out is good stuff and is bad stuff, but we get a lot of stuff. So what ends up happening is I start going through and figuring out what is the good stuff. And that gets us to a pull quote. I knew this was going to be intense. I did not expect it to be as thorough as it was. It was absolutely a master class. I've taken many, many business classes in my degree. Great pull quote. Put that on the web page. Put that on your social. Blah, 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 blah. Coolio. But that wasn't something that she wrote. That's something she said. Okay. Well, let's take it to the extra step. Anybody seen my prior presentation on the 5 levels of data that you get through video? This is the whole thing. So it's what there's said and how it's said.
I knew that this was going to be intense. I did not expect it to be as thorough as it was. And it was absolutely a masterclass. I've taken many, many business classes for my degree.
Now, we hear her voice. Now it's not just an idea, now it's humanized. Now we feel something from her, and we feel the pause, and we feel the energy. That's important. How do we use that within the context of the video that I'm going to be producing to take people not along on a journey of understanding, but a journey of emotive connecting? So let's take it to the next step. Let's see what she looked like when she said that, because we have it on video.
I knew that this was going to be intense. I did not expect it to be as thorough as it was. And it was absolutely a masterclass. I've taken many, many business classes for my degree.
Now we got an extra layer. Cool. Now, how do I take all of these little bits that I've gotten from these people and put it into a cohesive something? Because we actually did 6 interviews. One we ended up not using for a number of reasons, one of which just, great guy, didn't bring the love. It didn't fit. He brought the energy down. So what I do is I figure out how to take all of these little bits in a nonlinear function and put it together. 5 people talking largely about the same experience, but from different perspectives. And I combine all of their insights so that it's one solid conversation from multiple voices, adding impact to it. And yes, those are all the little tiny bits in there. And you see up here, the top layer, that's all the extra stuff to hide the edits, because this is not in the same order in which they said it. In some cases, I had to remove that breath or that pause or that stumble so that it flows naturally. So when you put it all together, you get this.
Everything that everybody said was completely true, but they undersold how much value is in the class. I did not expect it to be as thorough as it was, and it was absolutely a masterclass.
It is definitely a full, intense week, and it is gonna help you to see where do you have an innate strength in when you look at the whole wheel and all the businesses, and where are the areas that maybe you do need to grow and learn for your own development so that you can better lead in the spaces that you're in. And it's also going to allow you to connect with others, to process ideas, to have the case studies and real world examples, as well as thinking about your company and the companies that you interact with. And so it creates a lot of space to work out the concepts.
The measurement system of our intrinsic value is a really key measure for us going forward. And we felt like the strategic planning sessions on Thursday morning tied together all of what we had experienced so far. I think this week really was illuminating for me as a business owner and operator. It really helped clarify where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go at a much deeper level than many other consultants or systems have been able to demonstrate.
Learning how to communicate effectively with an entire management team or a business owner, how to speak their language, and learning that all of the sections and functions of a business are connected at every part was extremely valuable and a huge aha moment. I mean, the legal section, the finance section, the operations section were more than anything that I've ever experienced.
The biggest tools that I've seen from this program are just understanding how the different aspects of your company should work together, and then being able to recognize when something isn't working and then how to start to address it. This was a refreshing deep dive into the subject matter of business growth.
There's a lot of value in being able to create focus, and the right kind of focus in the areas that the business owner might just not naturally go to, but the kinds of focus that their business needs to deliver the value they want in it. There are things I can take away from this week, both in terms of relationships, great people I met while I was here, both the team that is the steward of this process as well as those who came to learn. That network's important. I enjoyed it because once you have the opportunity to meet the people that are in the room that are also growth oriented, that have a mindset of wanting to grow themselves and therefore be able to multiply the impact. The content is really well formed. You have leaders from different disciplines who share quite a bit of their experience, and you can just feel in the conversation that they've really been there and done this.
I talk to a lot of consultants, and a lot of them, frankly, irritate me because they're so devoid from real-world experience. And you can tell that Ken and John have lived it, and that they've been so close to so many companies, and they've really honed what does work and what doesn't work. And this isn't theory for them, this is practical. And that's just such a huge, huge gift to know that this is actually going to work in the real world and not just in a classroom.
So all of the people in the boot camp are in business development. They all have MBAs. They all are experienced people, and they came out of this saying, okay, I'm going to take this again. Most of the people said they can't wait to come back next year because they knew that they missed stuff, which was not at all what my client was expecting. What they were expecting was for me to come back with a neat, immersive promotional piece, not everything else, because I ask questions. And I want to take both the viewer of my work as well as the people that I'm working with on a journey of exploration. So we've humanized the data, but what do we get on top of that cool thing? Well, first of all, the takeaways were that the boot camp was a heck of a lot more impactful than they had realized. They've been doing this for a decade. They never really bothered to get into it. So now they got a whole new sense of what it is they're actually doing. And they also understand that the teamwork necessary for the case study that the students were doing was an additional value, because they said, can we do this virtually? No, you are not doing this virtually. They wanted that integration. They wanted that push and pull that happened as they're working on this. That was one of the big selling features for it. And being able to talk to the person behind the case study, which they didn't expect, blew all their minds, because afterwards they could all take out for a beer and get even more info from this guy. But the big heavy hitter on all of this was they realized they got it backwards. They are not a software company. They are a business development company that has software that helps the development go faster and smoother. And so now they are reconfiguring the entire premise of their business after a decade because they never bothered to ask. So if you want to really know how to reach your customers, talk to them. If you really want to know how to be better at what you do, you talk to them. If you want to know how to be better in all aspects, from the getting them to get it to helping them once you've gotten them, you got to talk to them, because you're only getting maybe half of what you could really use. And so this is the whole thing of when someone says, oh, you're a camera guy. Well, eventually I grab a camera. But it's all the things that go around it so that eventually I can show you something that came through a camera. That is always because I want to know why. And that's that. Any questions?
Could you put your first slide up? I took notes, but I wanted to catch your words if you don't mind.
Oh, you bet.
So I like
I'll scroll through.
All the way back.
Do, 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 do. Come on. I can't have stunned you all.
How long was that video?
That's about 3 minutes. That's on the longer side of things. I shoot for 2 to 3 minutes long. If we can't figure out what it is we're trying to say in about 3 to 3.5 minutes tops, then we are going way too far. And sometimes somebody says, well, can we do this in under 10 minutes? Oh, like all 3 chapters? Sure. Because there's a reason why, besides just the form factor, that radio and television commercials are usually in 30-second and 60-second increments. Because if you don't know how to say it hard and fast, you do not know what you're trying to say.
You know, like, there's some commercials, and these are large corporations, and I literally, at the end or the beginning, I'm like, who are you? Like, you got millions of dollars. I have no idea who this is. It was just like...
Well, this is multi-pronged. I'm not even sure who they are, what they're trying to sell me, and why I should care. Yeah, because a lot of large companies in particular seem to function on momentum. That we're this big, so we don't really have to worry too much about what we do. We just got to keep putting our name out there. Harley-Davidson does not have to advertise. Coca-Cola does not have to advertise. But they spend a lot of money to remind you that you're still part of the cool kids.
But that's different than...
But then there's the other ones which either get really bad marketing advice, advertising advice, or maybe even worse, they are dictating what they think the message should be because they're the smartest kid in the room. And no offense, but someone's going to write you a fat check and you don't really have to do much except for check off the boxes. A lot of people will do that. There's not a lot of people who are going to say, hey, I know you're going to write me a check for $3 million, but let's stop and ask ourselves, what are we really doing here? And so when I'm talking to people, my whole thing is, in order for me to do the kind of work that I do, you have to be willing to both personally and financially invest in where you're going. Because I upended their apple cart with this. They're thrilled, but they didn't expect all of this. So now they're all excited because now they really know what their true strength is after all of this time. And if they didn't want to learn, I would be a really bad solution for that.
A whole room full of people here who want to listen on your behalf. What are we listening for if we're going to recommend you? Do you have a size company, vertical, whatever?
Tish and I can work with a lot of people, but again, they have to let us get inside. Tish does the hardcore black belt stuff. I'm a green belt at the UX thing. This is the deep research analyst. I do what I do the way that I did for over 25 years as a journalist. I'm asking all these questions, and then how did that happen, and how did that make you feel, and then how does this work? And having run hundreds and hundreds of interviews with people, gotten very used to leading them into a conversation where we learn things through the process. So ideally, someone's smart enough to hire Tish. And then Tish brings me on the project. And because if you really want to get it right, you start here. And then I come in and I do the humanization stuff. Because all the questions that Tish was talking about in her presentation are very similar to the kinds of things that I'm doing, but I'm doing them largely in the field.
Okay, so same question for her. So listening on your behalf.
Yeah, if you're listening on my behalf, you heard somebody say, "Oh, we're getting ready to do a whole full rebrand because things just aren't going well." Yeah, please stop.
Sometimes.
We're spending all this money on our marketing. We spent $20,000 and all we got was this lousy T-shirt. True story. That's the thing. Oh, we just, we've tried all these different things, and I just had a client, and she's like, I change it up every 6 weeks and nothing's sticking. I'm like, I wonder why.
Now, this is by no means a dig at present company. Present company's here because you're cool. But I have actually had multiple conversations in the last period of time where people have said one version or the other of, oh, I don't even bother with marketing anymore. I just throw money away and never get anything from it. Yeah. Well, you're talking to the wrong people. Because good marketing people, right, and very much my alchemist over here, I'm
just the president.
We are going to actually ask questions. A lot of people out there will say, oh, we work at people just like you, and we have multiple things we can do for you. Would you like package A, package B, package C? And what you get is what I have learned is the illusion of bespoke. They're selling it to you at top price, telling you that they're making it just for you, when actually they've got a whole box of them sitting in the back room. And they just dusted it off and said, here you go. And then you wonder why everybody's website in your industry looks the same. Everybody's social feed looks the same. Why? Because it's coming out of a cookie cutter approach. And if you don't know what makes you fundamentally you, one, you're not asking the right questions. And two, your customers have the same problem where they see you as all being interchangeable. And you can solve that with a couple of questions and then being brave enough to actually do something actionable with what you've learned. And then, like with the kind of work that I do, you turn that lens around, and then rather than having my customers say, oh, my people love me, prove it. Put them on camera and let people see that, oh my God, they really do love you. All right, cool, let them do the work. Everybody is expecting you to say, I'm the best, all right? But when you get a whole bunch of people who gush about you, and it does not say paid promotion, because you had to say that legally. You can't have actors imitate real customers. When they actually get the real stuff, it connects. And when they connect, they tend to write you checks. Funny how that works. Anything else? 3? Oh.
So.
Arise.
Yeah, I'm all over there.
Oh, by the way, we forgot to do this earlier. Ready? Wonder Twin Powers activate.
Jonathan was talking about social media and how everything looks the same. You may be like, ugh, social media. And you know what? You can totally be successful without the social media. It doesn't mean no internet presence. But you don't have to do the social media stuff if you don't want to. If you would like to know more, on April 14th, I am doing a virtual presentation, so you don't have to come in person. My house is just not big enough for that.
Limited engagement.
Yes, limited engagement. But I will put the link in this meetup if you guys want to attend. And if you can't make the time work or whatever, just put your email address in there and I will send you the recording.
Yeah.
So you guys can see that.
But to put a button on the question, who do you send our way? Anybody who doesn't want to go backwards. And I hate to say it that bluntly, but without getting political, everything gets more expensive. Nothing ever gets cheaper. If you don't have an 8 or 10% growth plan, you're going backwards. You're losing money steadily. And you can say, hey, I'm just going to coast for a while. Well, what happens when you take your foot off the gas? You slow down.
Torque, you slow down. Yeah.
You slow down. And that guy down the street's got his foot on the gas the whole time, and you're going to wonder, well, now why does he have 3 locations? I just have one. Because he had a plan. And part of the plan is trying to figure out how to get there. And part of how to get there is how to be able to speak the language of the people who write you the fat checks. So even if you're not planning on building an empire, you still got to have increasingly better communication with the people. And Ms. Gill.
One last question regarding when do you do a case study after they implement things? So you've done this. They're clearly going to have to tweak some marketing. Hopefully, they're using that imagery all over whatever the marketing tools that they utilize as far as internet or website, maybe whatever social media they utilize. What for your own growth and talking to your customers and painting a portrait, if you will, do you go back and say, okay, what did you get out of this? What have you seen based on this particular?
That is a great question because you don't often get that. And certainly with some smaller businesses, they don't really keep good track of their metrics. But the great metric is when they hire you again. And so these guys have hired me for 2 more things coming up this year, one of which is to do a more immersive version of what we did with that thing because of the tweaks that they've implemented to it. So then we're going to be sitting down and looking at how what we've already done has affected, because one of the things that you should always be doing is saying, oh yeah, that's really great. And how did you find me? Oh, you found me through my LinkedIn, or you found it because Ross recommended me to, or you did a Google search, you came to my website and you saw that really cool video on the web page and that's why you wanted to know more. Thank you very much. But usually we're just so excited to take the phone call, we forget to figure out, what am I doing that's working?
Yeah.
Or even worse, what are we doing that's not working?
So yeah, typically with the work that I do, when I do it, they actually don't come back because they're so successful after that. The casket company who wanted to triple their business in 2 years, we did it in 3 months. With spending less on their advertising, and all we did was tweak their website and add a couple things to help the experience. Oh, and we didn't make people call it. But yeah, we tripled it in 3 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically they're like, oh, I don't need you anymore. And I'm like, but you do. There's things change.
Well, that becomes where you start talking about, okay, this is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. That I keep saying, it's not a marketing skirmish, it's a marketing campaign. It's not one and done. It's something you have to continually do because everything changes, including the dynamics in the marketplace, where your company is going, well, now we are with 3 locations. Okay, well, that's going to change some of the demographics, some of the psychographics, because you're now in different markets. Physically, forget that you still sell the same thing. So it's, Kaizen is not just for manufacturing. Constant improvement is something we should all be doing in all aspects of our business, just like in our personal lives. How can I be a little stronger today than I was yesterday? And that slow but steady, like, yeah, okay, we do the thing, great. And you're great. You've got the new language, you got the new website, you got the new marketing materials that really better communicate. Cool. Where do we go from here? How do we implement what we've learned to take us step by step by step so that you have the most horrible problem in the world? I can't keep up with orders.
And what are you hearing as it's changing? Because everything is changing, and if your people start asking, and you're like, oh, I keep having to write this email over and over again. Might be something you need to consider, like, oh, this is a thing. We need to get this up on the site, or we need to be talking about this, or we need to be presenting this because we're getting this question over and over.
So that's like the oldest school thing I did in my job 24 years ago was keep a phone log. And if you got X calls about Y thing, that's something people do know.
But that's usually something that only happens over a certain size. Under a certain size, and I think it's as variable as anything, they just all have their shoulder to the wheel every day. They're just trying to keep the lights on, and they don't have enough power to say, you know what, let's hire 2 people whose sole job is to keep track of all this stuff so we've got a better idea of what's going on. That's money thrown out the window in the mindset of a lot of people, but it's very, very valuable if you know how to implement it.
Great job.